worry. Hello, everyone. Monday, here we are again. Keeps coming round ever so quick. Really gorgeous day, though. Really beautiful weather here in Sussex, in the on the south coast of England. Hi, Edith. Hi, Linda and Michael Blackstone. I was going to call you Redstone. That's weird. I do know a Redstone. Blackstone, that's why. Hi, Jonathan Hateley.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, Lucy Edkins. Hi. It's a bit like being on Blue Peter. You're not going to get a badge, though, at the end of it. Sorry. No badges here. Oh, I have got some badges, but you can't. I've sent. Oh, you've got your badge on.
Yeah. I don't think I've worn this shirt since last year. So
I need to send. I'll have to bring tomorrow, Lucy. I'll get you a badge.
Thank you.
A badge. You need a pure badge so that everyone knows you've been branded. Pure branded. So first of all, before we get going, talking to Lucy and to Jonathan, who saw the amazing films over the weekend? Fran White's film, absolutely awesome. Did you see it? Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Caitlin Locke, who did your photography for you.
right.
Film. Really cool. Really super cool. So proud of it. And then on Sunday was the interview with me talking to Will Devlin, who is, you know, a massive patron of Pure. Good. I'm glad you saw it, Edith. We can talk about it later. It's just it's super cool. But Fran saw it. Phew. A bit awkward if you hadn't seen it, Fran. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go to the YouTube channel, go to the website. It is a really amazing piece of work, really beautifully produced by Caitlin. And if anyone, this is one of the offerings from this Art360 that we upgraded. We said you can show your own films, which we're going to be doing in a minute with Jonathan, and you can also employ someone to make a professional film for you as well, because these are all parts of the critical elements of helping artists get more visible and get more comfortable with being on screen and letting the audience connect so closely with you and your story. Yeah, Will's film was really great, and Will Devlin, who's just got his recently been awarded his Green Michelin star, which is like the first ever Green Michelin stars. So proud. We obviously show our artwork in his 2 restaurants, and I've been curating at the Curlew for about over 10 years now. It's a fantastic venue. And yeah, it's lovely insights into everything. This is the great thing about doing this. You get these little insights that you never expected. So no, it's great. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to Jonathan and Lucy in a minute. Before we do, obviously we have to do all of the normal directions. Like my, I'm like on the BA stewardess thing. And all of that. So we are live streaming onto Facebook and to YouTube. So anyone who's watching us on Facebook and YouTube, we don't forget you. We love you. We love you. Watch us, and please press the thumbs up and the heart emoji so that Facebook knows that people are watching and shares it with more people. And any comments, any questions you've got, pop them in the comments area there. And Sophie will be watching over on Facebook, and she will bring any of the questions over here. Anyone who's watching on Crowdcast, please remember to put your questions in the Ask a Question area at the bottom of the screen here, because it's very difficult for me to engage and listen and have conversation and run all the 50 million films that everybody now wants me to show. I've become a film producer, as well as observing what's going on in the sidebar. So that is probably one step too far for me, my little brain. So yeah, be kind and put them in the Ask a Question area, and then I know I definitely won't miss anyone. Hello, Philippa. It's lovely to have you back. Thank you, Sophie. And Sophie's definitely watching over on Facebook to make sure we don't miss any questions. So welcome, Jonathan and Lucy. This is exciting. We've been waiting for this.
Can you hear us right? Because we haven't got our earphones in, have we?
Your sound is cool. Yeah, sounds good. We were a bit worried about the sound, only because sometimes we can get some really nasty feedback or back echo, but actually it's fine at the moment. I think the drapery is absorbing and bouncing the sound.
Yeah, it's good
or the sheet. Which one is it? In this in this little TV studio that we've created here. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to show you and everyone watching an introduction. Put my teeth in. First of all, I'm going to put my teeth in. Then I'm going to show you an introduction to Jonathan's process and sculpture, just so that everyone who doesn't really know that much about Jonathan can get a bit more of an insight. And anyone who does, well, it's going to be a lovely little treat for you. So let me just do a screen share on that, and then we will.
Wasn't bad, was it? Not as good as Fran's, but
we'll get Caitlin in next time. So I'm going to hand over the full screen to you guys so that everyone can fully appreciate the environment and see all your beautiful artworks all around the pair of you. That's lovely. So while we were watching that film, some of interesting little questions kind of popped up into my head. The first one was about the mould making, because that's fascinating. It's pink. I didn't know it was pink.
Doesn't have to be always pink. It goes pink. It's a white thixotropic liquid that gets catalyzed with sometimes blues, but mostly pink.
Yeah, mint green and that
mint
sort of,
green.
yeah.
But yeah, mostly pink. We get pink because Lucy prefers pink.
It looks nicer. The molds look nicer.
So is that the bit of the work that you principally do, Lucy, working on molds? Or
so I do some mould making, and then mainly I do a lot of casting work for Jonathan, and seam work, so cleaning up all the seam lines, putting in texture, kind of getting them ready for Jonathan to paint.
Yeah, Lucy's sort of starting. I mean, we only do so many sculptures a year, and in the 5 years you've been working for me, it's not been that many sculptures to actually get hold of and learn the mold making process. So Lucy's had to pick it up with each sculpture that we've done, and she's very good now. But it's probably the most important part of the job beyond the sculpture. So I'm kind of quite protective about getting my hands onto it as well. And obviously the first layer of silicon takes all the detail. So I generally do that. And then we both tend to, you basically have to separate the sculpture into different parts with walls. And we both do that together.
I mean, it's quite a big responsibility, isn't it, to cast to mold someone else's work? It's like, you know, you're giving your baby to me to mold. It's quite scary.
That is an incredible part of the process that I'm not sure everyone really appreciates, how vulnerable the life of a sculpture is, from the point where you start making it through to the point where people see it completed here. So could you just talk a little bit about that, Jonathan, about how you conceive it and then you get it into, you start the armor, we saw the metal, and you start putting the clay on, and then it on its journey?
Well, I mean, the armature is the first most important thing, because ultimately, when you've put a whole load of clay onto the armature, you then also, when it's finished, when the sculpture's finished, it's got to be strong enough to take a hell of a lot of silicon and then fiberglass. And until that fiberglass actually solidifies and actually supports everything, your sculpture is vulnerable to bending or whatever if the armature isn't strong enough. In fact, we have in the past, because we use a lot of aluminium wire in limbs and things, we've in the past had the walls going round the arm, and the arm actually starting to lower, so we had to support it with things to stop it collapsing. But the whole thing is to basically separate it off so that it can all come apart, because in the end, the clay sculpture, I've got an example. This is the sculpture we did for the award for the world's divers, and so it's actually fallen apart. It melted in here the other day, so it doesn't matter because we've already made the mold. But so this is the sculpture, and then it's a pretty sort of simple sculpture. So it basically has to be divided up down the center. Is that right?
Yeah, so down here.
And so this is actually, it was three ways, wasn't it? So this is the mold that comes from that, and what we do is cover the sculpture with one coat of silicon, and then onto that we do the walls, which we do in paper. In fact, we actually use old pure catalogues.
I'm outraged.
It's great quality paper.
And
very, very good quality paper.
Yeah.
But they're going to be worth, those pure catalogues will be worth something one day. You'll be ruined today.
We use the open studio ones as well.
Good, I'm pleased to hear it.
It's just great paper. So that goes up and divides it all up, and then we add silicon to the sculpture and the walls, and then we add all these sort of little things that connect it all, and so that's the first thing. We thicken it all up, and that's what covers the sculpture. And then to make it all solid, we have to fiberglass over the top to make it all strong, and obviously you use release agents in between, and then eventually we just take it all apart. We have to bolt it all, drill the holes, bolt it all together, or we bolt it when we're doing the casting, but we take it all apart, and then we're painting in resin and whatever. Or in the case of bronzes, we use the same mold and we put wax into here and make a hollow wax version of this.
And then you send the wax off to the foundry, do you?
Yeah, we either a foundry will take the mold and do the wax themselves, or we do the wax ourselves. To make sure that the seams are all done properly and everything.
So that's a fairly critical element. So this is an original clay model here we've got in front of us.
Yeah, we just happen to have still lying around in the studio, because this is actually, I usually use wet normal clay that you do pottery with, but this is oil-based clay, and so it doesn't crack up. Well, it does crack up when it gets too hot and falls apart. It's like plasticine.
Its legs are about to fall off, which is quite
But we actually, because we had to do some more awards this year, we actually used this for making sure the seams were right. Well, Lucy did.
Yeah.
For making sure the seams were right.
Yeah, just using it as reference, and we're just so glad that we've got this around the workshop, so we can just double check, and I can have a look and be like, yeah, okay, that line goes there. Okay, I'll pop that back in.
Yeah.
It's like pattern matching.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and kind of getting it pretty well exact to how the original clay sculpture and how Jonathan visualizes it, I suppose, as close as possible.
When we say the seams, it's where all those walls were built up around the sculpture. They've got to be made good, to look like the original.
So you don't normally keep the original clay sculpt?
No, usually that gets destroyed when the mold's all taken apart and everything falls apart. Usually, because most sculptures, you have a steel armature going into some part, usually the back, and you can't get the mold off without cutting the armature. And so by cutting the armature, everything falls apart and the thing's destroyed, which is quite upsetting at times. But
I can imagine, especially at times if maybe the mold wasn't going quite according to plan.
Yeah, which full well mustn't happen at times.
It's kind of one of the risks, isn't it? We've been talking a lot to artists in this series, because obviously we're talking about process and materials, about that happy accident and the risks of losing artwork along the way, and how things sometimes feel like they've broken or they're not going to end up where they're meant to be. And then if you just keep going and you just keep trying, and then it comes out. So you have had that experience, haven't you, recently?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Go on, tell us. Go on. This is going to be a cathartic moment.
So we're moulding Jonathan's recent sculpture, and we had an issue with the catalyst not being mixed up completely,
Or it was too old.
That was it. It was the catalyst was, well, we suspect it could have been too old, the catalyst that I used to mix up. And normally when you add the catalyst to the silicon, as John said, it starts to change color and it starts to go pink. And this wasn't happening despite kind of putting in what I deemed was the right amount of catalyst. And it wasn't curing as quick as we'd hoped. And we were starting to think, oh gosh, is this really ever going to cure? And this was on the face as well, the most important part. And in the end, we managed to overcome it, and it was all okay. And it was fine. And I think when these small things happen,
Big things.
big things happen, it's a great learning curve. And not only that, you feel more confident going forward, being like, okay, I've kind of gotten over this. It's kind of,
all these things offer us the opportunity to grow, don't they? I know this is, I'm always banging on to you guys about this. It's like, okay, can we change it? No. Okay, so what are we going to do? We have to move on. What are we meant to learn from this? How can we make this a learning experience that means that next time we don't have the stress associated with it? But I think the thing that we found with talking to lots of artists is that the stress is inherent in being an artist.
mm-hmm.
Because you're making something, you're starting from scratch every single time.
Yep.
And that is inherently risky.
Yeah, no, it is. And it was very pointed in that instance for sure. But we've actually got 4 of them nearly cast now, so we got past.
And that was the first 2-person one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that called Intertwined?
Yes.
Yeah, Intertwined. I did well there to remember that. So the first 2-person sculpt out of Jonathan Hateley's studio, how did that feel?
To be honest, from start to finish, that was a bit of a nightmare, because it started in lockdown in here, and I didn't make an armature strong enough because I brought the sort of materials back here, thinking I wouldn't be able to go to my studio, and then it all started to dry out in here. We moved it into the summer house at the bottom of the garden, and it was still drying out in there. And then we were told we could go back to the studio, And I took it in the car, and it collapsed in the car. And then got into the studio and sort of had to almost start again. So it's been through a lot, really, from that to the mold making to well, it's now done. So
yeah,
I'm moving on.
And the casts are coming out nice as well. So that's all I can say.
Yeah, casts came out today.
Yeah.
After one of them didn't come out so well.
No.
So. We're not making ourselves look unprofessional at this point.
I don't think you're making yourselves look unprofessional at all. What I think you're doing is showing people how valuable these sculpts are, because they're not easy. I think you make it often look really, really easy. You know, you make the sculpts and they come out, I mean, beautifully. Look at transients on the that we've got in front of us here, and sunset on the other side, and you've got
winter facing,
and then is that releasing behind you?
Yeah.
And then faith. You make it look so easy, and I think it's really important for people to understand it's not easy. It's not easy. Right from the moment of inspiration to thinking about the armature and how you actually, because sometimes the idea is great, but there's no way of actually creating it, because you can't make an armature that's actually going to withstand. There is another one called Withstanding the Fall, isn't there? We haven't got that. Very poignantly. So I think it is really important for people to see that it's not unprofessional. It is the whole professionality of the way you approach your work, is that there's a certain degree of jeopardy in it, and that's why it's expensive. You don't just churn them out.
No. I mean, I do know how to stop the biggest dangerous things happening, because I've been sculpting for a long time. But yeah, anything can happen at some point or another, and
as we found out with
keep it to a minimum.
Yeah, as we found out with Intertwined, and you're never quite sure when that moment's going to come. So you mentioned lockdown, and you started the Intertwined sculpture in lockdown, but the other sculpt that we saw in that film was the lockdown man. Talk to us about that.
Contemplations in lockdown. Yeah, I mean, actually, I think we said in the last time we spoke on here, that came from you, which is probably why you brought it up.
No, I'd completely forgotten about that.
No, it was you suggesting that I needed to keep up sort of interaction, because at the time we thought we wouldn't be able to do much. So I suddenly came up with the idea that by doing something every day, a bit like I did years ago with my 365 sculpture, when I did it every day for a year. I started this sculpture and wanted people to suggest words about how they were feeling or what lockdown meant for them, and started putting them on the figure. And I started with a sort of figure just standing up straight, and it didn't feel right at all. He was standing up straight with his arms straight out, and then and that didn't feel right. So I just felt he needed to be a bit contorted and in a situation that he probably wouldn't get into normally, and as though he was sort of awkward but trying to keep us a distance as well. So
what I meant was more about, not so much about the inspiration for the sculpture, but how you approached the mold making and the casting of that, because of all the intricate words in it and everything to get the detail.
It's no different to any of the others, really. I mean, what does happen is, if you have a lot of detail, you can get air bubbles, and so you'll lose the odd little thing, and that's where Lucy comes in, and she has to put right what's missing. But yeah, pretty much the same. It was slightly different, that one, in that it was the letters and words were more intricate in places. But it was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's actually, I was kind of a bit scared of it when I did the first cast, because I thought, oh gosh, you've got all these beautiful fonts in there, and a lot of stuff that you might have to put back in because of where the seam line falls. But actually, it was a really lovely sculpt to kind of clean up put all the text back in. It was really good fun. I really enjoyed doing that one.
Oh, there you go. So the one that seemed, you would think with all the, as you say, because when I looked at it with all the fonts and the lettering, I was thought, oh, this one's going to be tricky, but actually not.
Yeah.
That's great. And looking at releasing behind you, how do you cope with, that's got quite a lot of delicate work right at the front of it. How does that work in a mold? Is that quite easy, or is that another problem area that you have to get around?
Well, I think it's, depending on the size of the sculpture, if it's a large sculpture, I will fiberglass them, and that will give it extra strength and will help it kind of withstand any kind of weather conditions, and kind of really secure those kind of intricate areas, such as the dress and her arms, especially. A lot of Jonathan's work with the arms either outstretched or the legs, it's really important that they're really strongly reinforced with fiberglass, because they need to be hardy and withstand anything.
One of the things that can happen with mold making is, then you never get a perfect cast out, and sometimes the seams can be there could be a step in them, and that's probably the biggest challenge Lucy ever has, is when something doesn't quite align and there's a step. So she has to take the part that's further out and build up the piece that's further in to make them look the same. So she's almost got to get rid of some of the sculpt and recreate it, if that makes any sense, by patching it up, basically.
How do you add stuff on then, Lucy? How do you do that?
It's a mixture of bronze, powder and gel coat, and it kind of creates this really nice, fairly thick paste that I can sculpt on to the sculpture and kind of end up creating the different patterns and putting that texture back in. And then I use a Dremel quite a lot as well. So Dremel is probably the most valuable tool that I use. I use it practically every day, and that is just going along the edges, kind of again putting more texture in, cleaning things up, getting rid of seam lines, and I think it's also kind of learning Jonathan's eye, I think, has been one of the other things since I've been working for him, kind of trying to see what he would want the sculpture to, or what he wants the sculpture to look like, and being like, yes, I know that is wrong and I need to replace that or kind of correct it, or add or take away bits and pieces.
Yeah, that's a long time learning. Trying to get you mean you were trying to get into Jonathan's head?
Well, when it's just us two in the workshop, we have to get on.
It's what's a Dremel? You're saying a
Dremel?
Yeah, what does the Dremel look like?
It's like a multi-purpose tool. So I don't know how to describe it. I suppose it's like a handheld tool.
It's like when you're being drilled at the dentist.
Yeah, exactly like that. Or if you're getting your nails done, I think sometimes they have them. I don't get my nails done very often. So yeah, it's kind of like the tool that they have at the dentist, and you can almost get those dental tools for Dremels, and they have different drill bits. They're about that big. Pop them in, and go along the seams with them.
So what happens after you've done the mold and you've done the Dremel, and you've cleaned it all up? What happens next, Jonathan?
You've done the mold, cleaned it up. That comes to me, patination, which is when you see we should say that the things we just talked about, they have to do in a bronze foundry as well when they're created in bronze with probably stronger tools than the Dremel. And what they do is they use a heat source and patinate it with chemicals, different chemicals that make. So when you see a sculpture in Whitehall or somewhere like that, big statue, you see them very dark black or brown, and that is not the color of bronze. Bronze is like a brassy coloured metal, but they patinate it with this chemical, and it makes it go dark brown. And that's what we do. And that's what the negative areas that you see on all these sculptures are all the patination that we put on. So that forms the background to it. And most sculptors who don't want to make more work for themselves just leave them patinated and wax them. But I decided to paint them. And that was the whole point of having this sort of relief within the sculptures, so that I would then have something to highlight with paint. And so that's what I do, paint the areas that I've designed to be highlighted.
So that's kind of like the final thing before you get them ready to go out into the world.
Yeah, sealing and waxing, and that's it.
And some of them are clearly fairly obviously indoor sculptures, but then others are very obviously outdoor sculptures. Is there a different end process for whether you think it's an indoor or an outdoor?
No, they all go through the same thing. And it's usually the smaller pieces that are more likely to be indoor, because when they're small, they don't have the fiberglass reinforcing. But having said that, we have had people put smaller pieces outside, and they seem to be okay. It's just that they could be vulnerable to something falling on them. I mean, all sculptures, if something falls on them, they could be damaged. But I guess the bigger pieces are more robust, but they're all finished in the same way. And they rely on the person who buys them really waxing them a couple of times a year, especially the resins, but even in bronze you have to wax them to protect them.
And do you when you sell a piece of work, you give them a care package, effectively telling them?
Yeah, in the certificates, which tells them what wax we use and that sort of thing.
I've got one in my garden that you need to come around and wax.
We will do which one that is.
We're not talking about that one. Shh. So you sent me the link to another film which is about casting. So I think it might be a good point at this point to show that film about casting, and then you can talk to us a bit more about the intricacies of casting, I think, because that's another massive area, isn't it, for what you do? Yeah, okay, right. I've got to find the right film now. Right, there it is. Right, back. So that was fascinating because we got a quarter glimpse of Sue.
Sue, yes. Hi, Sue.
Lovely Sue.
Well, Sue's quite new.
Sue's new.
Yeah. Yeah, so in that video you saw Sue, she very kindly helped me do some casting on the new intertwined sculpture the other day, so that was good fun. And yeah, it's just nice to have Sue have another hand help.
So Sue's new to the studio and she's now learning all the things that you learn, and there's 5 years to learn. The bits of little paper, is that the fiberglass that we saw you putting? You painted it in 2 different colours, didn't you? The inside of the mould. What was that all about?
So the first layer that I do is a mixture of bronze powder and resin, and I paint that into the mould, leave that to cure, and that gives the finish. The second layer is then slate, and that basically kind of gets into all the detail, gives it a bit more strength. And then once that's cured, I go over with some fiberglass matting to give it even more strength. And then pop all the pieces together, and then do some pours along the seam to reinforce those seams, and then pop them out and we get a sculpture.
Yeah. So they're hollow. The sculptures are hollow, as we saw from, that was sunset at the beginning, wasn't it, laying on her back?
That was for a bronze. So when you see the green wax, that's for a bronze, which was actually for this one here. Yeah.
And so you pour the bronze into the molds as well?
No, you make a hollow wax in the same way as Lucy would make a resin by painting it in. You basically paint wax in until it's about 4 mil thick, and then you join all the mold together and slush it, fill it with wax and pour it out, and then you take it all apart, and then the seams have to be done. So you've got this green wax sculpture that have to have the seams all corrected, which is easier than resin because it's obviously just scraping wax and making that good. And then that goes to the foundry, who do stuff that I'm not totally clear upon, but it's called the lost wax process, which has been done for thousands of years. And then I think they make a ceramic shell of it, which with lots of risers to allow the air to come out. And then they basically pour into that new mold, the ceramic mold, molten bronze, which basically burns out the wax. Yeah. So you're basically left with a bronze sculpture.
Yeah, as you pour the hot bronze in it, you lose the wax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very shorthand version of what they do.
Yeah, very, very shorthand. It takes them, and it's again quite a dangerous process. So the bronzes all go off to a foundry, don't they, to be created? And at the moment, that foundry is in Greece.
It is the one we're currently using. Yeah.
But if there's anyone here who's interested, do get in contact with info@jonathanhateley.com, because that's quite a long way to go, and it's not good for the environment really to go all the way to Greece. But they're great, aren't they? The guys who have been doing your sculptures, they've been doing it for a little while now, haven't they, in Greece?
Yeah, they get to know my work more and more, so it's working better. Yeah.
Do you think that's important, that the person who is making the molds and doing the casting, it has an intimate knowledge of your work, that really does get to know it?
I mean, we did get some strange things back at first from the foundry because they didn't know what I wanted so much. And it's like, I really trust Lucy to do the resins. And so I know that if I gave it to somebody fresh, they probably wouldn't know. And I should say Sue as well, she's getting to learn what we need as well. But somebody completely fresh would probably find it difficult to get what I need doing. It's although you get this flash line down the seams, it isn't always as simple as just getting rid of that. There's a lot more work to it than that.
Yeah, there's a lot more subtleties that sometimes that will come out in a cast that you think, okay, how can I enhance that? How can I make that better? And it's remembering all those different. Each sculpture has something on them, or some different pieces that might need doing a specific way. and they're all different, and it's all kind of learning which sculpture needs what doing. And you learn that along as you go along the editions, you kind of get to know which, your way around each sculpture.
So you don't cast them all in one go, do you? You cast one and they go out to the galleries, and then as they sell, you cast to order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or exhibition, whatever is needed. Yeah.
So a bit like a printmaker, you'll set an intention for a number of casts with each sculpt, and you stick to that number rigidly, but you don't cast them all in one go. They are cast as people buy them.
Yeah.
And generally, how many a year new sculpts do you create?
Oh dear.
Leading question.
Well, it's been difficult to tell because we've had different things. Like last year, we had the award and we had to cast 14 of those. But I mean, at the moment, it's quite difficult to get even more than 4 or 5 sculptures done a year. And so, yeah, I'd love it to be more, but at the moment, that's what it's turning out to be.
I think your collectors are probably quite happy that it's not anymore. Because obviously that keeps them rare, and it means that they're exclusive, and it's something people have to wait for. Quite a lot of the ones that we're seeing here have sold out in the resin version, haven't they? So Transience is sold out, Sunset sold out. I think releasing sold out in resin.
Yeah.
So you've got only, in what we can see here, only 2 of these are still available in resin versions.
Yeah.
So there's never a prolific amount of work available, and again, that's something that I think is really important for people to understand. So we've got some questions. I'm going to have a look at the questions. We answered some of them along the way, but this is quite a good one. What is the largest sculpture you have made so far?
Oh, Serena's telling me what. No, certainly not very many big ones. I mean, All From One in this sort of flow of work is the biggest one. Is All From One, the one you have in your garden. And
what are you talking about?
but I have done bigger ones before. I just haven't for this series of.
I think 365. 365 is quite big, isn't it?
Yeah, and I did another one called Seasons, which stood from the ground sort of a bit higher than me, I think it was. So yeah, about that. And I've done bigger things in the commercial world as well, but so far, I mean, you imagine doing this sort of detail in something that's really big, unless you did very big details, it would take quite a while. They already take a while already with this size. So.
Yeah, that's why you can't make so many.
Yeah.
Are there particular materials you have to use for outdoor sculpture as opposed to indoor? I think we answered that one, didn't we? And said it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating progress. Has John worked with wood as the former? So the wood as the armature, I suppose, is the thing that. Have you worked with wood?
You sometimes put elements of wood in the armature, but generally, and certainly the base is always wood, but generally no. I mean, the armature is always steel. Well, we have to weld, or I have to weld the steel how I want it. Quite often, you weld the steel and you build the figure, and it doesn't quite work out how you want it, so you end up bending metal again in the process. But if you work it out, and that's the problem with me, I'm impatient once I have an idea to get on with it and go mad at it, and then find myself having to go back a few paces and correct things that I haven't done properly. In fact, the first film showed me actually drawing something out and measuring the armature on it, just so I knew it wasn't going to all go wrong later on. But wood, we use wooden plinths, oak plinths that pieces sit on in the gardens, and you know, that's all been part of the learning curve since being in the commercial world and going into presenting my work and having to learn how to actually set it in place for exhibitions and for people's gardens, and knowing you know, the right thing to do. And so all these sculptures that Lucy casts, we then have to put a structure inside or some fixings that come from usually down the legs, that come out of the bottom of the sculpture that then go onto the oak plinths or whatever we decide to mount it on, or granite bases or whatever.
Yeah, so you do use wood, don't you, quite a lot in that process to present the work, a bit like a painter would use a frame.
Yeah.
Part of the presentation. Annie is asking you, Lucy, has working on Jonathan's work made you want to create sculptures of your own?
Definitely. And in fact, sometimes I find myself, when I've been coming up with ideas in the past for sculptures, that they end up slowly merging into what Jonathan does. And then, I'll be thinking, oh, I could do this. And then I think, oh, wait, that's what Jonathan does. But I do.
There's copyrights on them.
Yeah. But yes, that's one of the great things with working with Jonathan. Also, I get to work on my own stuff, and also get to sculpt in my spare time and in between things, and have Jonathan kind of teach me and show me kind of bits where I'm going wrong with my own work, and kind of improve me as a sculptor as well. So yeah.
Annie's also said, why no British foundry? Because they're too expensive, Annie.
That's not always the only reason.
Not always the only reason, but primarily the reason.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean, when you go down certain roads, and I was introduced to somebody here who acted as the go-between for the Greek foundry, and so you try that. And but before I'd used English foundries, but at the moment they're doing a good job, so we stick with them.
Yeah, and obviously from a commercial perspective, bronze sculptures are expensive. I mean, a transient in bronze, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How much would that be?
I'll just ask the boss.
Yeah.
19,000.
Transients? No.
19,000, yes.
That's what she's saying.
Yeah. No, she's right.
Shows that much money.
So £19,000 for a bronze transient is a lot of money, and therefore you're thinking about your buyer as well, because they're paying for the bronze as well. They're paying for the commodity. So that's all part of the decision about where what foundry you use. You want the best possible outcome, but for a price that is reasonable, when you bear in mind that they're paying for a metal, they're paying for a commodity. So yeah, it's all part of the process. Right, here's a long one from Bev. All the characters are very theatrical. Bev, you need to watch the first edition of Art360. What was the design influence for the body decoration, and is there a message in the youthful fine features of the faces?
Oh, crikey. Certainly the transients one, it's all based on Madame Butterfly, and I guess the face was meant to show what I was trying to put across that she's feeling, and it's sort of letting go of hope in a way, which is kind of what everybody sees it as a positive sculpture. It's actually about things passing away, I guess. Really, it's in the story of Madame Butterfly. I should say this one, interfacing. So she's very cold, and so I got Lucy to blow. It doesn't really look like her, but I got her to blow her face out and used her as reference for that one. And this one was we got a model in. And so I did the face pretty much as I could as the model was. So I love doing faces, but that's all I can say about that, really.
Yeah, the work is quite theatrical, but then you did work in theatre.
Yes,
prior to
for a number of years, and actually. Madame Butterfly was one of the shows I worked on, and it was when we were possibly going to show at Glyndebourne that I suddenly had the idea to do the whole thing of being cherry blossom tree, and the character's waiting, or has been waiting, for her partner, the American, to come home, but it turns out that he's not going to, and so she lets the petals go. And that just came to me just in the car park after I'd left the conversation about showing a Glyndebourne. So yeah, that sort of thing.
Now, Bev is also saying, how long is the process from design start to finish? So I think it would be quite a good point there to share the you just put together like a little slideshow, didn't you, Lucy? Just to show that process from beginning to end. So thank you, Bev, for creating that segue. I'm just going to bring that up on screen just so that you can talk us through it, Lucy. I'm going to give the screen over to there you are. So that's the package. So that's Sunset, isn't it? And that's in the field behind the workshop, isn't it? Yeah. I thought I recognised it. And then, so this is where it all begins, the concept and design. So that part, Jonathan, the concept and design, can talk to us about that.
That's the thing that I have to wait for something to happen in my head, because whilst I might have an idea for a pose or something, it's very difficult sometimes getting the idea of what I want to do with the pose and with the surface of the figure to come to me. And so I'll draw in books. I don't like drawing too much in a book. I like there to be in something else to get hold of in the sculpture. But generally I'll do a quick rough sketch of what I want, and it kind of sometimes I'll really try hard to find. It's like writing, when you're trying to think of what you're going to write. I'm trying to think of what the sculpture is going to be about, and sometimes it'll just come to me just like that. And the piece that I was doing there was imprinted, and that came from wanting to think about wanting to do a fetal position, and that got me thinking of fingerprints being, given to us at a very early stage in the womb, and so making them large as a pattern over the figure. And so things like that happen, and then you go immediately after the drawing to, as I said before, probably too quickly, into an armature, and then putting on the clay, getting as much reference material as I can get together, either a model or just finding lots of different views of that similar position. And yeah, and just working away at the figure. I recently did an anatomy course to even help me along the way with that. But yeah, and as soon as the figure, as a finished sculpture, finished figure is done, I then go marking out all the details that I want to do and start cutting out the details with sort of little wire tools.
Yeah, so this concept and design stage can take anything from, a short period of time to a really long period of time, can't it? As the idea kind of unfolds in your mind and you play with it. I know this one here that we're just seeing going out of shot, that's been on the bench for a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, her face fell off recently.
Oh dear, she's been around for a while, a year.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just sort of lost faith in it, and I looked at it the other day when putting her face back on. That I do want to go back to it. I kind of want to raise her up a bit onto a sort of sculpted plinth, and probably almost start again. But yeah, we'll see how it goes with that one.
Her fingers definitely, she needs a good meal, Jonathan. Bless her heart. So yeah, it's difficult to say how long it takes in the design and concept, because as I say, you've got one there that happened really quickly, imprinted, and another one that's taken, it's already been a year and still on the bench, still coming through. But that's okay. That's how, that's an art practice, isn't it? So that's a bit closer up of imprinted.
Yeah.
And you're starting to put the design on here, as we can see. So yeah, these little tools that you use to do the design, what are they? Are they specific tools?
Well, you buy tools from model making type places, but also I think the ones I use for that are often things I've made out of copper tubing and guitar strings sometimes, or bits of wire, and yeah, you mark it out with that and then start scooping it out.
And how long does that part take, the bit where you're mark making? Is that a bit quicker?
No. Well, the mark making, but the actual cutting out the detail, that, I mean, it can go on for a long time, and you know, Lucy can attest to the to me sometimes saying, remind me never to do circles again, or
almost every sculpture you're like, why am I doing this? And I think you say this probably about 4 or 5 times a year.
I can imagine, because I mean, it's intricate stuff, and it'll feel inside of yourself physically very demanding to make those marks over and over again in such a precise.
Yeah. My favorite part of sculpting is when you start really applying the clay and forming it, and you know, making what you want, and just creating the shape of what you want. But I've never been able to leave a sculpture like that. You know, sometimes I do like a sculpture that I've done in the applying of clay, but I can never leave it like that. I have to keep going. I have to add detail for some reason.
That's just part of your practice, isn't it? It's part of who you are.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're on the floor with your miner's lamp on.
I took that photo and I didn't think that John would want it in the slideshow.
So you put it in
So I
anyway.
put it in anyway.
Put that in anyway. That shows the relationship, people. So then we move on to moulding. So things start, once you've got the sculpt done and it's embellished with whatever pattern, this process starts to speed up then, doesn't it?
Yeah, it usually takes about a week to do one sculpture, and that's using the process we used. I mean, one of the old ways of where we've got the paper dividing up the sculpture, people used to, or still do, actually make a clay wall all around the sculpture and then apply silicone, and you have to do one piece as you went along. But we do it all in one go with the way we are there. And yeah, it usually takes a week, maybe a little less, to get a mould done, depending on the size.
Just trying to see whether this is a Pure magazine or whether it's a Southeast Open. Just check. So about a week for that process, part of the process, the moulding.
Yeah.
So this is what you said, the silicone that you've put.
Yeah. So from left to right, the first picture is the first layer of silicone, and that goes on and goes into all the detail, kind of drips in, and it's almost like the first skin, and it will protect the clay, stop it from drying out. And then the middle one of imprinted is when we start putting along the walls and we start dividing it up. And the aim for that is that you want to get rid of any undercuts too, because that will kind of give you problems when demolding it later on when you're casting it.
Undercuts. What are undercuts?
Undercuts are kind of, I wonder if I suppose they're like, what's the best way of describing it? I suppose
there are certain rules about sculpture, I suppose. If you were to do somebody with flowing hair, but you actually made a piece of the hair, I'm probably getting myself into a mess here, but you locked it in almost. You made the hair. Oh dear, how do you?
It's any way that the sculpture could get caught.
Yeah.
Because even though the silicone is flexible, the fiberglass jacket isn't. So when it comes to unmolding a cast, you want to try and get the sculpture out as easy as possible otherwise it could get stuck in the mold. It could get stuck in the mold if you don't have any flexibility, and if you've kind of done a wall over an undercut, you might not ever get it out.
I think I'm getting the gist of it. And that's why you've got several bits of mold here going on, so that you will be able to, and the face is on its own.
It's just basically like a jigsaw puzzle, and figuring each sculpture is different. And when I was learning at university, we did very simple molds, and as John said, I learned doing clay walls, which is really quite difficult, and then this is difficult too, but doing Jonathan's work, because they are figurative, tend to be a lot more challenging than other molds that you can kind of come across. And so that's really interesting from a mold making point of view, being able to kind of come up with ways of solving certain problems that you might have, not only in the resin, but when it comes to wax as well, because the wax is a lot more delicate. So it might not have as much leeway as the resin does. So you've also got to bear that in mind if you're going to use the same mold for resin as you will do for wax later on.
Okay, and then we come to the casting. So the mold making has taken about a week. So far, we could have had a month or a year. And then the mold making about a week, and then the casting and the seams. How long does that bit kind of go on?
Again, that depends per sculpture, but roughly about a week. It takes me about 1 to 2 days to cast them, depending on the size. So if they're small sculptures, then that only takes me about a day. If they're if they're big, then it takes me about 2 days because it's fiberglassing and then doing pours and fills and that sort of stuff. And then about 5 to 6 days to do the seams. The smaller ones I can get done in about 2 to 3 days and get them patinated and fixed on bases and ready to go. So yeah.
That's and then you do the finishing. So the finishing is the painting and the and the sealing.
Yeah.
So that's that part. And how long does that take? Is that another quite long process?
Well, I mean, it does frustrate me sometimes, but I mean, I started off doing these sort of sculptures, getting them done in sort of a day or even less sometimes, but they seem to have got more complicated, and as time has gone on, and sometimes they'll take 2 days, but hopefully not more than that. But then you've got to seal them and wax them on top of that as well.
So it could take you up to a month, really, if you were kind of going at it fluidly all the time, and you got your idea, your concept covered quite well. It's about a month.
Not in terms of the sculpting, because the sculpting can take about 3 months at times.
No, that's what I'm saying. Once you've got the sculpt down, then after that, the process after that is about a month.
It can be, yeah.
And I mean, very rarely will I be working on just one sculpture as well. And that might include orders as well, or up and coming exhibitions with deadlines and things like that. So, and now with the lovely Sue joining us, so there'll be more than one sculpture on the go at all times. And it's kind of, after you've gone through all the processes, it probably takes about a month.
Yeah. So it's not a quick process.
No.
Anne is asking where they sell. So what are the client? What's the client base? But they sell all over the world, don't they?
Well, we've got somebody watching, haven't we, who sells them? Linda Blackton. Hi, Linda. But and she's frustrated at the moment to get back to showing work at the affordables, etc. So she started taking us all around the world at the affordable art fairs and what have you, and local galleries like Wing. Where else?
Oh, so at the moment we've got them at the Cotswolds Sculpture Park as well, which is great.
Yeah, and then you normally exhibit at Wisley, don't you? And the guy who has the Huff House.
Oh,
yeah, the guy, David Painter, he has. We are doing that this year. We're not doing Wisley, they're not doing it this year, but we are doing the Huff House. In fact, the guy who designed or made the original Huff House bought Sunset, so that was nice. And
they fly off far and wide, don't they?
Yeah, we've got a new gallery as well in Devon, haven't we? The main gallery, and that the work went off to them this week. Last week, and it's all quite nice at the moment. I think.
Yeah, lots of galleries.
Single art has been great for us. We shouldn't forget them.
Sorry, who?
Single Art, the website.
Single Art, yes.
We do a whole lot of promotion for their website. They're sort of French based, I think, and they've been great for us.
So by having that diverse client base of having Linda who takes you to the art fairs, and you've got Single Art Online, and then you've got a few galleries spread across the country, and then the outside shows, that's working very well as a business model for selling what you make, and you pretty much sell out quite quickly as you make them.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
That is generally what happens, Jonathan. It's generally what's happening. So yes, to answer your question, Annie, yes, they are. They go far and wide, all over the world, Singapore and New York, aren't they? I mean, everywhere. I think, has one gone to Africa?
Oh, I don't think so, is it?
Where was one going this week, Serena? One was going somewhere.
To Germany, yeah.
Germany. There we are, Germany. I knew one was going.
Germany and Hong Kong we've been to. Where else?
Oh, I
New York?
don't like to say.
They're everywhere, you know. So Annie also was saying about, do people request sculptures to be made that are less adorned? So I suppose that would go back to things like the swimming sculpture, where they had an idea, but you gave them, you created that finish.
Yeah, I designed it, and in fact, I want to do a sculpt in that sort of style. Which, I mean, it was for the world divers, and so I wanted to give them, you know, it was, what do you call them? Those lines at the bottom of the swimming pool.
I found it out. I can't remember what they're called now. Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
bright lines at the bottom of the swimming pool. I wanted to do a design on the surface of the figure, which had to be androgynous, and so that helped sort of do that. And so we sculpted out the shapes on the surface of the figure. Is that answering your question? I can't remember.
Yes, I think so. So you do bespoke to commission work, but remember that if you do a commission for a sculpt, you're going to be buying, either paying a lot of money for a one-off, or you're going to be buying a series. So how many did the swimming award? That was
17.
Well, that's well, 14 to begin with, and then
another 3. We won't talk about that.
3 were lost in transit, and we've made another 3, and now the 3 have been found again, I believe, though I don't know the latest.
Yes. So, yeah, that if you want a bespoke piece, yes, it's possible, but you have to bear in mind that wouldn't be a cheap ask, because you'll either have one of them or you'll have a series of them, and that's an expensive project to be made.
We've just been a turtle, haven't we, for someone in America? So so we do the odd thing here and there. Yeah,
but they're not. It's not a. It's something to be undertaken with a lot of thought, I think, when you commission.
Yeah, when you're only doing 4 or 5 sculptures a year, and I want to get this sort of work out there. We haven't really time.
Annie's saying, have the Greeks got one? But I'm not sure whether we have sent Annie out to Greece.
Well, the Foundry have got them there. But
yeah, but I don't think there's been any buyers.
No.
I'm not sure. Serena would be able to correct us. Serena is the hub of the buy.
Yeah, she ought to be here along with Sue, really.
Yeah, so Sue's definitely watching, and she said hello. And so yes, that's been fascinating, both of you, and what's been really lovely is to see the dynamic between the two of you, and for everyone to see how much Lucy is involved in what you do, and how the process works from beginning to end. Perhaps they do a sideline. No, I hope not, Annie. I hope they're not making little Jonathan Hateley sidelines out in Greece. That would be.
They might do.
I think, Jonathan, you need to get out there, don't you, and see them.
Yeah, no, we need to get over there, but at the moment, not so easy.
Yeah, not possible at the moment. Thank you so much, and that's been absolutely fascinating. Obviously, I am a fairly critical part of the practice, so I know quite a lot about what goes on. But I think the way you've explained it, with going through the process and showing those couple of films, hopefully gives people a bit more insight into what you do, and an understanding of the intricacies and the complexities that go into making artwork of this nature. It is not. It's not run of the mill.
No, It's not.
And it's not easy. That's why you don't, because people often say to me, oh, well, can't you make some more? And it's like, well, no, it doesn't actually work that way. So I think you've explained now, you know, quite a lot of detail why that isn't, and why it will never be, because there is by its very nature a limiter on how much you can do when you put so much into the process and when the inspiration comes. So it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you both so much. I will come back up. I'll take the pain away, Jonathan, and I'll come back. Jonathan was like, why can't you stay on screen? I was like, no, I'm going down there. Quiet in the corner. So tomorrow we've got Charlie Knoll, and she's going to be talking to us about her glass. I know she's been watching this evening. And then on Wednesday we've got Jeremy, and I'm going to be showing some films and chatting to Jeremy Bear about his artwork. On Thursday we've got a recording from Jane Cowan's studio that I did with her about a month ago. So that's going to be fascinating. She's a stone carver. So we've got glass, we've got filmmaking, we've got a stone carver, and then on Friday we've got Jane Cordery, who is also quite 3D as well in her work. So it's going to be a fascinating week. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Fascinating all the way along. It's been really good, and thank you for doing it all.
Oh, you're welcome. I really love doing. I can't lie. I really love doing it. It's not a hard work for me. I really love doing it. I love art. I love artists. I love being in the environment of art and understanding how you all work, because I think the more the public and everyone else understands the artist's story, the easier it is for them to approach artwork and buy original artwork instead of feeling uncomfortable. And then, you know, the default mechanism is to buy something easily off the shelf, going to IKEA or M&S or whatever. The more we have this open narrative and the more people understand, the less fear there is. And then they will come and they will buy the original artwork, which I think, you know, that hopefully will be my legacy, is that, you know, people feel more able to approach the artists and without fear of it being a mystery. We are trying to demystify a lot of that so that they feel really comfortable. And, you know, hopefully a lot of the artists will put these videos onto their website so that anyone arriving on their website will be able to see them as well. And obviously we share them far and wide, and we've got, you know, very good viewing of the film. So no, it's a joy. It's a joy to do, and I really love it, and I love spending time with all of you. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I'm not to terrify you, but it's health and safety tomorrow. Yes, I'll be there. So I'll be back in time to do Charlie's interview, and I'm really fascinated to hear all about Charlie's glass. So bye for now, but everyone tune in tomorrow, same time, and we'll be talking to Charlie about all her glass. So see you all later.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.